So here's how Wolf Blitzer started off the GOP debate. He was laying the groundwork. This is what the debate was going to be about. Now, the video clip, for whatever reason, when it was broadcast here in Los Angeles on the West Coast, it slips a little, but I'll tell you what he says after.
Since you terror attacks in Paris and San Bernardino, the FBI director says the country now faces the greatest terror threat since 9/11. You all have different approaches to keeping the country safe, and that will be the focus of tonight's debate.
Okay, so here's exactly what he just said. He said, since you last debated, Americans have witnessed terror attacks in Paris and San Bernardino. Also in Colorado.
Yeah.
Also in Colorado. Did not bring that up. Isn't that weird? There was a guy with some high-powered guns, went into a Planned Parenthood, shot it up. He was Christian. He was forwarding a political ideology, and he didn't mention that. Isn't that wild?
Also, how many Americans witnessed the terror attacks in Paris?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Since Americans have witnessed, I guess on TV, that's where we witness them.
Sure.
So I thought that was very interesting. So basically, if you're a white Christian, that doesn't count as terrorism in America. But if you're Muslim, it does count, right? Because the San Bernardino people, that's homegrown. That guy was born here.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, and by the way, that those accounts that she had made some jihad statement on Facebook, that didn't happen.
BS, yeah.
That was all BS. That didn't happen.
Yeah.
That was all
told lies.
That was all wishful thinking. So I think that's interesting, right? So if you're dark and Muslim, that's definitely a terrorist attack. But if you're white and Christian, that's a guy with mental problems, and he's a lone wolf. And we just have to, somebody has to talk to that fella. He's a nice guy, even though he killed a cop and shot a vet.
Right. And more clearly articulated his political standpoint
very
than
clearly.
Anybody else I've ever heard.
Very clearly articulated his political standpoint. And in fact, not only is he being charged with murder, but he's also being charged with plagiarizing the right-wing talking points in court. That's how much that guy. So, okay. So it was all going to be about terrorism and security and safety. And you know what else they didn't mention as a threat to the safety and security of our country? They didn't mention climate change. Right? Even though the Defense Department lists climate change as a major factor, as a big threat to our security. In fact, the Department of Defense said global climate change will have wide-ranging implications for the United States national security interests over the foreseeable future. It is a present security threat, not strictly a long-term risk. That's what the U.S. Department of Defense said. It also said it is climate change is all. The Defense Department is already observing the impacts of climate change in shocks and stressors to vulnerable nations and communities, including in the United States, the Arctic, Middle East, Africa, Asia, and South America. So climate change is a big threat to national security. It's a big threat to the stability of the world, right?
Sure.
So didn't come up. Nobody brought it up. Nobody brought it up. You know who brought it up? John Kasich brought it up, and here's how.
First and foremost, we need to go and destroy ISIS, and we need to do this with our Arab friends and our friends in Europe. And when I see they have a climate conference over in Paris, they should have been talking about destroying ISIS because they are involved in virtually every country, across this world. Now.
Yeah. They shouldn't be talking about climate change. Talk about
Didn't the Syrian drought play a huge role in the
Sure.
the war in Syria?
So now
leading up to it.
No, he's right. ISIS is in every country. You know how ISIS is huge in like Norway?
Yes.
You know?
Oh, sure. I've been. Do you ever go to Dublin just to hang out with your Irish ISIS?
When Irish ISIS are smiling.
The whole world is bright and gay, but when Iris's eyes are smiling, they will steal your heart away. So You are correct, Robert. They say that all this problem in Syria, all the big unrest, it was caused by a drought, which we now know was caused because it's been published in peer-reviewed papers that drought was connected to climate change. So there was a drought in Syria. The Syrian government couldn't provide for its people. The farmers left their farms because of the drought. They came into the cities looking for work, looking for help. The government couldn't help them. The government went to the UN, said, could you help us? We're having a drought. The UN said, no, we won't help you. But if this causes a civil war, we will help somebody bomb you. So this is directly why the whole night they talk about ISIS. They don't talk about in Syria, and they don't talk about how that got started. They don't talk about climate change. The Department of Defense has said this is a big deal. Never comes up, and the only time it does come up is when John Kasich dismisses it. He comes up to, that science crap again. Would you guys with the science? The U.S. Department of Defense says this. This isn't, these aren't a bunch of hippies in San Francisco, right, at a college. Okay, these aren't a bunch of knuckleheads. These are military people saying this. So the real threat to America, of course, was not brought up the whole night. They spent the whole night talking about a terrorist group called ISIS that doesn't even own a fucking plane. Okay, for 2 hours, they wanted us to shit our pants over ISIS. And guess what? The country is. The country couldn't be more afraid. It worked perfectly. The military-industrial complex is very happy with how upset, scared, and afraid the whole country is, because that means endless money. The whole night they talked about ramping up the military budget. We got to rebuild the Air Force. We got to rebuild the Navy. Rebuild? Again, ISIS doesn't have a plane. Okay. So,
and by the way, meanwhile, one of our biggest problems in the military and in the intelligence community is our cyber defense. That's a known fact. And if you want to talk about what is going on with ISIS, we could play the whole game purely by computer. We could. That's where if we're going to defeat ISIS, which we probably won't, but if we're going to do it by computer.
I agree with you. I made the point in another YouTube video that we did this week that, when Anonymous took down 900 ISIS Twitter accounts, it did more damage to them than dropping 900 bombs on them.
Yeah.
Dropping bombs on them, it sounds crazy, but it only makes them stronger.
Yeah, it recruits more terrorists as opposed to taking down their Twitter, which stops them from recruiting.
That's what started ISIS, by the way. As Steph said on this show, we've bombed them into existence.
Right.
Yeah.
They used to be called Baathists. That was Saddam's party. And then the geniuses got rid of all the Baathists. And then they had to go somewhere, and they went to ISIS.